US President Barack Obama has reportedly signed secret orders allowing CIA teams to enter Libya to gather intelligence and set up links with rebels. Meanwhile, the Libyan foreign minister has arrived in Britain, saying he's no longer willing to work under the regime of Colonel Gaddafi. RT's Paula Sleer has the latest from Tripoli.
Well, there have been airstrikes in the east and southeastern suburbs of Tripoli at a military base there. While the front line seems to have been pushed ever so further back, it is now not far from the town of Ajdabia, which is just 70 kilometers west of the rebel stronghold of Benghazi. There have been a number of coalition airstrikes in and around Ajdabia, which certainly does suggest that the coalition is afraid that Gaddafi's forces are closing in on this town, and also they do not want Ajdabia to fall to Gaddafi's forces. Now, the terrain that the rebel fighters are fighting on is working against them. It is essentially one highway in the desert. It is very hard for them to get supplies, and certainly at this stage it does seem as if those coalition airstrikes are making very little difference. On the ground, Gaddafi is winning the war, but certainly he has been dealt a psychological blow. His foreign minister, Musa Kusa, has defected, and he is currently in discussions with the British intelligence. Now, Kusa has been the foreign minister of this country since 2009. He headed the Libyan intelligence agency for some 15 years, and that position earned him the nickname of the Man of Death. He is Gaddafi's right-hand man. He is trusted by Gaddafi, but he certainly has been described as a shrewd operator by the international community. So many here are asking, what is it exactly that Mr. Musa Kusa knows that has caused him to defect, and just how important can the information he has be to the coalition partners? NATO has taken over the full command of all military operations here, but increasingly the questions being posed, not only by Tripoli but by the international community, are that they might be liberating the rebels, but this certainly is a very different scenario from the Arab democratic revolutions that we saw in Tunisia and Egypt. Well, the big question on everyone's mind here is the whole question of weapons. This is a concern that Tripoli has had from the beginning, and it is a legal question whether or not that United Nations Resolution 1973 actually allows for the arming of the rebel fighters. The rebels themselves have shown themselves to lack good leadership, to be quite loosely organized, and by and large not to actually know how to use the weapons that they do have. Now, we understand that about 2 to 3 weeks ago, the American President Barack Obama reportedly signed a secret order that saw the deployment of CIA agents to this country. We understand that they have been making contact with the opposition fighters. They've been assessing their needs, determining their strengths. Ironically, though, what Tripoli is saying is that it might be a good thing that the discussion is now on the international table, on the international agenda in terms of arming the rebels, because it is forcing the international community to revisit the question of who is among their ranks. At the same time, it is questioning the whole legitimacy of this operation, as my colleague explored further.
The international community permitted intervention in Libya to protect civilians from Colonel Gaddafi, but Washington wants to go further than that and is considering arming the rebels. While officially denying that toppling Gaddafi is the objective of its involvement in Libya,
but broadening our military mission to include regime change would be a mistake.
President Obama has reportedly signed a secret order authorizing covert American support for rebel forces, seeking to oust the Libyan leader. Critics of the U.S. taking sides in a civil war warn of the consequences.
When we help accelerate the chaos, and in creating more chaos, which we think somehow we're going to be able to direct the outcome, it's the same hubris that has visited the United States in Iraq, the same hubris that keeps us pinioned in Afghanistan, causes us to believe that somehow we are going to direct events and the outcome in Libya. We cannot do that. Nor do we have the right to determine who the leader of Libya should be.
Many fear radical forces could take advantage of the chaos in Libya. Former jihadist Noman Benetman, who renounced his al-Qaeda affiliation in 2000, says he estimates 1,000 jihadists are among the rebels in Libya. One Libyan rebel commander has openly admitted his fighters have al-Qaeda links. Other reports say terrorists seized Libyan surface-to-air missiles when arsenals were looted. NATO intelligence reports claim flickers of al-Qaeda and Hezbollah have been found among the rebels in Libya, but maintain there is no reason to believe their presence is significant. But a U.S. military study 3 years ago said Libyans made up the second largest group of jihadists in the world. right after Saudi Arabia.
All of that seems to be discarded as the U.S. is trying to prop up the opposition in Libya, as some analysts say, in an attempt to forge a relationship with them that would be favorable for the United States in the future.
But experts say arming the rebels could backfire.
We've been in this situation in Afghanistan. One day we help people, and the next day they shoot at us.
In Afghanistan, back in the 80s, the U.S. had a narrow goal: to help the Mujahideen fight Soviet troops. Subsequently, the same Mujahideen militants turned their weapons and training against the U.S. Among those of them was Osama bin Laden, whose group eventually evolved into Al-Qaeda.
They didn't think about what would happen and what we've seen with a tribal society breaking up into its separate tribes and leading to the construction of the Taliban.
Over 2 decades after arming the Afghan Mujahideen, America is now considering giving weapons to another rebel band with an unclear identity, simply because of who they're fighting against. Ganesh Shakan, RT, Washington, D.C.
Well, Nathan Sassaman, author and a former troop commander in Iraq, says there's no way the United States or anyone else can predict the consequences of supporting rebels in Libya.
There's going to be a period of time where you're trying to figure out, who's in charge, who's really genuine, who's really interested in the goals of the future of Libya, and then who's really corrupt and out for selfish gain. And you're not going to gain that from bombing them from 20,000 feet above the air or less. You're going to only gain that from boots on the ground. The American people are not stupid. And I think it would be really good for our government and our leaders to just come out and say, we want the leader of Libya out of power, whether he's captured, whether he's killed, whether he's sent into exile. But that's really what we want. We want regime change. And we're entering a revolution that we know very little about. And we don't know, and be careful what comes out on the other end. And be prepared to take the secular tyranny or the religious tyranny that might evolve into from this action. I think we're either all in on this thing and we're going to do it right, or we're looking at another 8 to 10 year escapade as what we've done in the other countries. And that is not the formula for success right now.